Okay, class, we're back for part 2 of Still Life. I am back in the same exact place as I was when I started the first section. I took a break, but my chair hasn't moved. It's in the same place. Some people actually kind of tape down around where the legs of the chair are so they know exactly how to get back into the same place that they were at. So I'm back where I was, and now that I have finished penciling in where I need my objects to go, I am going to start looking for light and shadows, and I'm going to block in my light and shadows. This blocked in the shapes. Now I'm going to block in my light and shadows. Sometimes we call this an underpainting. I'm going to leave the sections that are highlighted totally white, and I'm not going to touch those, but I'm going to hit my midtones and my shadows with the paint. And I'm going to choose a color that's similar to the palette that I have here. Okay. And what I want to do right now is squint my eyes at the objects that I'm painting and locate the areas that are the lightest. Okay. And that's going to be reflections on my fruit in this case. I'm going to leave those totally white, just the paper white. But everything else is going to have kind of a tone on it. And I'm going to work from there. So I'm going to set up the camera so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Kind of got a weird light hitting that from outside. Scoot over just a smidge. Okay. That's pretty good, I guess. All right, and then I've got paints here. Good. You can use a regular brush for it. I'm going to use a slightly larger brush to do some of my blocking. Does the same thing. I'm going to start with a mid-tone. I don't want it to be too dark. The color doesn't have to be perfect right now. It's all about the value. Remember how important value control is. And I'm squinting, and for the time being, I'm just looking for my highlights, which I'm going to leave totally blank, and my darkest darks. So for the time being, I'm just going to hit my darkest areas with just a first kind of coat. It doesn't matter if the color is totally perfect. I'm just blocking in kind of where my shadows go. Obviously in between here. There's a dark shadow. That shadow works its way underneath. There's a fold back there. Top part of my apple. Inside part of my apple there. Again, it does not matter that the colors are perfect. It does not matter if the details are perfect. This just is showing me where my light and shadows are. We're going to smooth things out later with oil pastel anyway. I do a lot of squinting for this. A lot of this is kind of shadowy. Underneath my lemon. That's all shadowed back there. My apple is casting a shadow back here also. That mark is slightly off. It's just a little bit lower. Yeah, that's better. Looking for shadows, I'm looking for shadows everywhere. Okay, now I'm going to go back in and look for my darkest shadows. I'm going to hit those a second time. Squinting is the key to this. Okay. All right, good. Let me kind of show you that. If you squint at it, you can kind of see where my lights and my shadows go. Okay. Now I'm actually going to do a really light wash. I'm going to stick with warm colors for my underpainting here. I'm going to do a yellow wash underneath. Notice that my objects, even though I have different colored objects, they're all colored the same color right now. The value is more important than the color. We'll get the value right first, and then we'll come back to the color later. Okay, I'm going to do a light wash for the more highlighted areas, the areas that are pure white right now. The only places that I want to keep pure white on this are the brightest highlights, the reflections. Other than that, I'm actually going to go through and give this whole thing kind of a yellow coat, and then we'll end up going back over it again later. I'm going to leave that section right in there, super light. pretty much everything else. And go over with this yellow here. That's all going to get darkened up again later anyways. I'm just going to give it a little bit of value for now. Again, I'm only keeping just my brightest highlights white. The rest of it I'm giving a little bit of color to. Okay. From here, now I'm going to try to be more accurate with my values. I don't want just the lightest lights and the darkest darks. I'm going to start getting the middle ranges in there. I'm going to get them kind of close. My color palette is definitely warm here. I've got reds, I've got oranges, I've got yellows. I'm going to complement that by cooling down my ground down here just a little bit. Opposites of blue, opposites of, orange are blue. Opposite of yellow is purple. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of that for my ground here and my ground back there. And then I'm actually going to use that opposite color again, and I'm going to hit my shadows with that. So I'm going to mix that up here with my brush. Notice I'm keeping my color palette separated up here. And I can be very specific with my color usage in this regard. Remember, value is the most important though. That's too bold. I want to kind of mute that. That's too purple. I don't want that. I'm going to use a little bit of brown, which is actually a shade of orange, because purple and orange, blue and orange are opposites, but purple and orange are very close to being opposite. So I can mute it in that way. Yes, that warms it up a little. That's closer to what I want. So I'm going to use that on my ground here, and I might also hit it in my shadows again. That's back in my background, behind where the apron is. There's not a lot of detail there anyway. Okay, that's working. This is all still the underpainting phase. But it is a darker value. I'm going to go in and hit my shadows again with this one. We're going to start layering up what we've got there. It's going to make some rich colors. Wow, that's nice. Okay. Okay. That's not bad. My shadows again. These are lighter shadows, they're not nearly as dark. Okay. Now I'm going to hit even darker again. The watercolors, we start light and we go dark. And I'm using purple in general here. Squinting helps me to see the absolute darkest areas. Okay. Yeah, that's not bad. Zoom that in a little. Good. Now that we kind of know where lights and shadows are going, we'll just kind of push that a little bit further, and then we'll go in with the localized color for these things. We'll make this pepper red, the apple, put some greens and some reds in there, and we'll keep this one pretty yellow. We're going to warm it up a little bit though. Put in our orange for our background. So now we're going to start applying color now that we have the values correct.